That's why I said I recommend they get that. That's another book I haven't read it.
Yeah.
Black Fatigue, because it's the same. We're fighting the same. And I think about it: voter suppression, abortion, taxes. That's the they just go around that circle. And for us, it's always voter suppression.
Yeah.
You know, whatever. All right, let me let you get in your class.
Okay. All right. Okay, sorry, y'all. And Andrea just called me. Andrea, rather. Hold on. Oh, Lord. So let's see. We got everybody here. All right. Okay, I just let me pause a minute because I'm discombobulated. Is that an old term, or do y'all know what that means? When something's discombobulated.
I know what it means.
Okay, good. I didn't know if it was something like, only old people use. I don't know. But anyhow, yeah, I just got disoriented technically, but discombobulated because I was working on your quiz. We're going to look at the a couple of items that I did that really are from the Code of Ethics, because we spent a good bit of time on that right at first, right? And then from the notes that I gave you. Okay, so it's going to be from the notes and from the Code of Ethics that we went over. So I'm writing that now. You're the last quiz to get done and posted, so you will have it. And remember, you always have plenty of time to get it done, right? We'll also be posting more material for your class project because you did your topics. Now I need to coordinate them for you so that you can make your choices. My intent was to set up a poll for you, which is still my intent, that I'll do through, I don't know what happened to Moodle, because Moodle, you used to could set the polls up right on Moodle, but I can't make it work this time. I don't know, they update and it just drives faculty crazy. I know it drives me. Anyway, so I'm going to set up a survey through SurveyMonkey for you, that you'll associate yourself with those topics. I'm gonna crunch them down into smaller topics. You'll have like about 4 that you'll choose. And at that point, starting next week, we'll do your groups, and you will have the details of your assignments that you'll do as a group, okay? That's your biggest part of this course, right? Is that class project. Well, I'm delayed getting on here because my boss, Dr. Salisbury, well, even though she's transitioning, she's still my boss technically. So she was discussing some things with me that were kind of interesting, and we may end up discussing some of it. I don't know. Have any of you read the book by Colson Whitehead, a Black author who wrote Underground Railroad?
No, ma'am.
And then he wrote
Yeah.
one other. Excellent book. Excellent book. I just, part of the reason I confessed to her that, you know, I didn't get this last quiz, your quiz done, is because I picked up that book after I'd ordered it. I heard him on 60 Minutes a week ago. And I said, oh, I got to get this book because it's a book about the Underground Railroad, but it also involves time travel, which my husband and I really enjoy. And so they're making a series out of his book called The Underground Railroad. And, you know, well, I like to read the book before they do series or movies because you get so much more detail as you're watching the movie. You know, you can also see stuff they left out, but then you know how it's gonna unfold, kind of. So so I started reading it and could not put it down. I got about 3 chapters in though, around the work I was doing on classes. So anyhow, we were talking about that, and she was saying how some work by authors, that particular book, Underground Railroad, is fictional. It's about a woman who he tells her whole background in the first 3 chapters, and you know, her lineage, for example, and then as she goes forward, she's going to actually have experiences in current times throughout history, from the time of slavery with her ancestors and herself right now, going forward in her role in Underground Railroad. So it just looked really interesting and something that, as a fictional work, intrigued me. But oh Lord, reading that book, I mean, I don't know, I just get chills thinking about it because it really had so much to do with the experiences of atrocities and just summarily dismissing the humanity in the slaves, even though they were, in some instances, quote, cared for well. Being cared for well didn't have anything to do with treating them like property. So if you birthed a healthy child that grew up to be a strapping boy and he's like, you know, 8 years old, he's going to get sold because he'd bring a prime price. And that's just horrendous, but it's just, I just highly recommend it. But anyhow, so Dr. Salisbury and I were discussing that, as well as some other issues that have to do with how we know our society still is, not only in the United States, but also on the world stage.
What's the name of it again, Dr. Savage?
It's called The Underground Railroad, and the author's name is Colson, Colson, and then Whitehead, 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 Colson Whitehead. Anyhow, and he's written several books, and he won Pulitzer Prize and other national awards for his writing, which is really good to read. Anyway, but what incidents have y'all seen lately in your real life where you knew that racism was a real thing? Yeah, it really does still persist.
I feel like mainly with like the election going on.
Who's that speaking? I can't see your.
Carolee. Sorry.
Carol.
I'm eating, so yes, ma'am.
Pronounce that again. I've been calling you wrong. I'm sorry, Ms. Alvin.
It's okay. It's Carolee. Yes,
Carolee. Okay. All right. Well, Carolee. So what about the elections make you think that, yeah, racism is a thing?
I feel like just with like, I guess ex-President Trump saying just inappropriate stuff, and then people still support him, even though they say like, I support him because of jobs, but it's okay for him to say racist stuff, but you still support him, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I can't think about certain instances, but I did have that in mind. And then just seeing other people just in general saying, you know, certain things, I don't know.
Okay. Okay. All right. Anybody else? Anything recent, like on television last night? Don't tell me I don't watch.
Dr. Savage,
Yes.
is it too late? Is it too late for me to check in? I'm coming from a doctor's appointment.
Not at all. I'm late getting on and struggling with lecture today. So no, everybody needs to sign on and then sign out when we're done. Okay. Make sure you still do that. Okay. So anybody watch the Harry and Meghan interview with Oprah last night? There's the second going to be tonight.
I didn't watch
Oh,
it,
I
but
didn't
I've
watch
seen
it,
a
but I was
few.
hearing about it.
Yeah,
What'd
I
you hear
heard
about
about
it, Alicia? Okay, what'd you hear about it?
And they was talking about how the baby was dark skinned and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
how
and
the-
then they also like they was kind of mad. Well, not the US or whatever, the people of us. The what you call that? What the court over there, they was kind of mad because Harry was taking up for his wife versus
right.
his family, like, you know, sticking with his family. But also I really don't know the story of what happened to Princess Diana, or I really don't know, but it's
Right.
very interesting how people talk about it, so I might need to research it and learn about it. But as far as what I know, I don't know if Princess Diana is Harry's mother or something.
She is.
But okay, but they did the same thing to her or something like that. I don't know. Don't quote me. But they was doing this kind of stuff to her, but he just felt like it was a change need to happen with his wife. So they
Right.
was really doing the same thing that they did to his mom, whereas he just couldn't step up and say anything about it. But now that it's his wife, he could talk about it and step up and, you know, take up for his wife.
As he should.
Right, exactly, as he should. I agree.
As he
I agree,
should.
Alicia. Yeah, yeah, and that's what I was getting at, because that's also what Dr. Salisbury and I were talking about just a minute ago too. You know how really appalling and discouraging. It's just so discouraging to think that, you know, here I am reading this book, and then, you know, all of the atrocities. Really, all of that continued into the 20th century and the mid 20th century at that. Let me see if I put that stuff up here for y'all. Hold on.
It just be kind of like, have you always wondering, like, what do people really think about you?
Right, exactly. All right, this is where I'm working on, y'all.
Oh, and then I heard that I don't know if it was like true or not, but I didn't watch it, so I'm just saying what I also seen. But their son, Archie, wouldn't be Prince or something.
Right.
Okay.
And they also didn't get protection, because, you know, all of those have people that they have guards, security people, right? And so they said that neither Meghan nor her children, even though they were Harry's children too, the prince, could not have any security details.
But one thing I can say, and I applaud Harry for this, and I feel like every man should do this, is no matter how much money Harry family had and all the stuff that they had, he didn't care about that at the end of the day when it came down to his wife and kids. Like, he left all that alone because that stuff didn't matter to him. You know, that money value didn't matter to him versus the respect.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Although I gotta say, Harry came across as he disappointed me, because when Oprah asked him, those of y'all who saw this or heard about it, but she asked him what one thing, how did it go? What one thing made you basically leave the crown, leave the monarchy, or the firm or institution, as they were referring to the Queen of England and all of that group. And you know, he sort of hem-hawed around a little bit, and I forget what he said, but it wasn't what I was expecting. I was kind of expecting, of course, I'm the romantic, and I was expecting him to say, well, because I love her, you know? So he kind of let me down there just a little bit, but other than that, he stood up for her and he stood up for his children. I have to say that it was really fascinating to me to see something like that happening at that class level, not only class, but social level as a result of their lineage. I mean, you know, the Queen of England actually descends back hundreds of years, right? So their lineage is royalty, and whatever reason, England likes that, and they kept that. That's part of their culture, right? You know, to think that it happens at that scale still in the world at all. We know it happens here, and it happens among people that are wealthy too, or all class levels really. But it's just fascinating to think that that persists in these days and times when we have advanced, industrialized countries that dominate economically in the world, right? And I don't know, it's just disappointing, but also interesting because one generation ago, this would be my great niece, a relative of mine. I can say which side of the family, or you know, get too detailed like that. But a relative of mine and my husband's had a child who married a black guy, and he had a female child and married a black guy, and she had 2 children, and her father refused to acknowledge them in the same way that Harry spoke about his father not talking to him. He still to this day does not own his own grandchildren, who are now, you know, having families of their own, right? And that still is troublesome to me, largely because he remarried in his life, left the mother of the daughter who, a white daughter who married a black man, and had 2 children. Well, he divorced and then remarried, and he remarried a woman who has a son that married an Asian woman, actually a Chinese woman. He had gone to China. This would have been my relative's stepson, and he went to China to teach English. He wanted that experience, fell in love with a Chinese woman there and married her and brought her back to the States. They had a child. That child is now living in the home of this particular relative and his second wife. Yet he still does not claim his first 2 grandchildren. Just boggles my mind to think that that kind of hypocrisy can be among those of us who embrace these anachronistic, meaning out of time, out of place attitudes, and can't move beyond, you know, the issue of color of skin. Humans are human beings, right? So I don't know. So that program was very interesting to me because of that, I have to say. Okay, so let's move on into what you do need to know and cover here. First of all, let me take care of some housekeeping. I want to click here for a minute and make sure you all know about your midterm evaluations. Hold on, let me get out of here. Oh, I didn't mean to get completely out of Moodle, sorry. All right, I just posted on your Social Work 4021, your field placement hours that you record up there. Let's see, where is it? It's down here somewhere. Ah, there you go. I'm hoping that by now, y'all already know who has been assigned to you for your contacts, in addition to Dr. Salisbury for just this semester. And also who has been assigned to fill in as she's making her transitions, right? So I'll show you this list. So are you all familiar with who you're reporting to in addition to Dr. Salisbury, or when you can't reach her?
No, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, I am.
Okay, well, you should, and now you know. Here it is. I've listed this here. I'm pulled up. Wait, where am I? Right here. It's under this week, or actually last week, March 2nd to March 5th. And I'll also put it here. I guess I'll go ahead. Well, I don't know. Let me duplicate it. All right, so we'll put it down here with this one too. Okay. All right, so put it under there. Okay. All right, so over here, oh wait, you can't see that. All right, there you go. Okay, so on your 4021 under week 8, I think it is, March 2nd through the 5th, is this list that shows who you report to in addition to Dr. Salisbury or for your midterm evaluations. Dr. Horn is assigned here, as you can see, to Carolee. Oh. And Ms. Burks, Ms. Davis, Ms. Henderson, Ms. Lewis, Ms. Scott, Ms. Turnage, Ms. Wilson, where else? Okay, and so you can find them here.
Great time. Went to space.
Who is Dr. Horn?
Space. That was fun.
Anissa Horn is currently, somebody has something going that I can't.
It was a
Can't
fun time.
hear.
Let's just jump out. Whee! Bye, played a big time. Yeah, let's just skydive.
And so what would the
wait,
context be?
Hold on, I'll tell you in just a minute. Somebody's got something playing in the background. I can't, okay, thank you. It sounds like something for kids maybe, I don't know. Okay, thank you. All right, Dr. Horn, she is assigned half-time to criminal justice and a quarter time to social work. She teaches our social welfare institution course, Social Work 1002. Some of you may have actually had her for that course. She is going to be coming over to social work beginning in the fall full-time, and will be, we anticipate, taking over the program coordination. I'm filling in, I'm kind of an interim coordinator, as we've talked about a little bit before, or mentioned somewhere along the line, for Dr. Salisbury as she transitions. But we're all three basically supporting Dr. Salisbury in wrapping up her previously assigned course with y'all. So that's why this is, we call it the trend, I call it the transition period, okay? So she's still your primary field instructor and obviously your instructor for your 4022, right? Your seminar. But when it comes to going out in the field, Dr. Horn, whose office is right across the hall from mine. So let me see which number it is. It's 229. So she's right across the hall from mine. And let me see what her number is. I'm not sure what her number is, actually. I just have her cell phone. But you can, let's see. I'll look that up and put it on the list for you. I'll revise the list and put it on there so you know how to contact her, okay? We are in the process. I know I've got scheduled this week. I am for Ms. Antley, Ms. Butler, Ms. Flores, Ms. Jordan, Bob, where am I? Ms. Thomas, Ms. White, Ms. Whitley, Ms. Wolford, and Ms. Yarborough. Okay. Okay, so I'll put her contact there. So I didn't realize some of y'all weren't familiar with her. But yeah, so she's going to be coming over here and she's helping out with getting midterms and your final evaluations done. What that entails is our going out to the field or making contact in the case of my arrangements with your agencies. It's been by Zoom because that's what they have preferred so far. Then, you know, I contact them, I meet them, I talk to them. Now I do need your original midterm evaluations. If we're doing it by Zoom, then I have to have it so that we sign off on it, and so will Dr. Horn. Or you might be able to just give them to Dr. Salisbury and she'll probably pass them on to us, I'm sure, those of us who actually do the evaluations. And of course, those of you who are 4E, let's see, Miss Downs, Miss Harvard, Miss Hill, Miss Kramer, Miss Woodridge, y'all are evaluated. Your evaluation with your field supervisor is reviewed by Miss Black. Okay. All right. Now you should be aware too, of course, that, and I'm sure this has already been covered, but that you are supposed to give this form to your supervisor, your field supervisor. They fill it out, then they meet with you and they are to go over it with you. You have to agree or disagree, and you do that by signing. You can make comments on things you may not agree with. And then when I get that, or Dr. Horn gets that, or Dr. Salisbury gets that, or Ms. Black gets that, then we discuss that if there are those issues. And we just generally do a wellness check of sort to be sure that field's still going well. If it's not, we expect we've heard from you, which I'm proud to say has been the case with, I know a couple of those who are assigned to me, so I appreciate that. Any questions about that? So now you
Yeah.
okay.
Is the evaluation form still due on the 13th? I think it's the 13th.
March?
Yes, ma'am.
That's a Saturday. Do you turn stuff in on Saturdays?
I can't remember if it was exactly the 13th, but I think it was needed to be turned in this week. I was trying to see because of midterms being pushed back.
Right, yeah. Well, they're only pushed back a couple of days actually, so yeah. They still need to be done by that date. You still need to have them done by, and I would say it's by the 12th. They need to be completed by the 12th.
Okay.
All right. Anything else about that? All right. Well, I'm going to fix that for you. Okay, so let's go back to our Practice II course. And I want to look at some of this content that I put up there. Of course, you got this, and I think that book messed me up with getting your recordings that I have so far downloaded on my home PC, because I can work better with the YouTube to be able to put the video up in addition to the audio, because on campus we can only upload the audio. So that may be why you're seeing some of that. Okay. Let me follow up with this. Anybody check out this? Social workers are essential. Or attend the Black History Matters event. And then what was this one? Oh yeah. Or how about this one? This was all voluntary. You weren't required to look at it, but I just want to see how many of you actually had time to look at it. This one's interesting. I wanted to point it out in case you just completely miss it, but apparently not only are people, students taking what are called gap years, where you skip a year between college, high school and college, but then I don't know, how long this will hold, but college graduates are apparently, according to this report, more interested now in fields that provide not just monetary value, but also provide personal satisfaction. So that's kind of heartening, and that they notice, let's see, this isn't in social work. This is just a general job market facilitator. You can go on to Indeed and look up different jobs for any kind of job, not just social work. But what's encouraging is that given that that's a general job seeking site, that they mentioned social work are now more popular for recent grads. Now, if we can just sell that to our dean, maybe we can get a master's program online here. That would be pretty cool. All right. Well, no responses. I'm assuming that didn't pan out. Did anyone attend the February 23rd, given that it was an assignment? There is a recording about it.
I did.
Oh, good. I think we talked about this before.
Yes, ma'am, we did.
Yeah, okay. All right, good. Okay. I'm going to be making announcements for applications to Phi Alpha. You will be invited to apply, and that's so that we can induct you into the organization. At the same time, we have the honors banquet that our College of Business and Social Science does, and they're reinstituting this spring. We didn't last spring because the whole nation was discombobulated because of the shutdowns that occurred as a result of that. Okay, and then we had this, the Tulsa, Oklahoma. Comments about that?
What you say?
Comments about this, the Tulsa, Oklahoma, going to T-Town, going back to T-Town. What was it about?
It was basically about Black people kind of having their own little city within, like basically generating funds for themselves, their own businesses. Maybe it was a school, perhaps.
That's exactly right.
Yes.
That's exactly right. So it was, and Shania, you were going to mention, because we talked about this in intersectionality too.
Right. It was a massacre.
Right.
It was because a young man traveled to another town, like he walked to another town, and apparently he came into contact with a white young woman, and she accused him of, I don't know if it was rape or just assaulting her. And so they decided to bomb. Well, did they bomb the town? Yeah, it's bombed.
Yeah, they did.
Bomb the town.
Yeah.
National Guard was involved too.
Yeah.
Andrea, say again? You were in that.
National Guard was involved in bombing the town when that happened.
That's right. That's exactly right. So when the riots occurred, and it was white population that were attacking the Black town because of this transgression that was perceived, which more often than not, those types of allegations were, well, actually, most were not proven or validated. They were used as excuses. Excellent movie. It's a fictional movie called Rosewood. It's about another town where there was bombing, or not bombing, they just attacked the town and burnt everything down. In this case, there was an actual bomb dropped on this this Black community right on the outskirts of Tulsa, Oklahoma. So it was actually in Tulsa, Oklahoma. That's what T-Town stands for. And they had built their own community, and it was a thriving community, as you saw, hopefully. It had its own banks, its own businesses, its own entertainment, its own transportation. Everything was covered, and they were thriving, as I said. And that was really the reason that they were destroyed as a town, sadly. And
yeah, because they were doing better than the white communities around them.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah. And that's a lesson for us today too. When we think about, communities that are being gentrified. You know what gentrification means?
Isn't that going into like poor communities and like building nice houses to raise the property value to drive out the other population?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Any of y'all watch those programs on cable TV, if you have cable, or on YouTube or whatever, where all these different people are rehabbing houses and they try to get
so I live in Shreveport, and in my house, we moved to Shreveport in 2018, not 2018, like 2008. And before we moved to Shreveport, my neighborhood was full of shotgun houses. So they tore those houses down and built new houses. Would you consider that like really it was for Hurricane Katrina victims that got the houses, but
right,
we wasn't a part of Hurricane Katrina. We was just blessed to be in one of the houses.
right.
To get one of the houses. Would you consider that? Whereas at first, it was a bad neighborhood, but now, like my neighborhood, it used to be so bad that they wouldn't deliver pizza over there. But now
Wow.
it's not even that bad of a neighborhood no more. Like
Excellent.
it's not shotgun houses and stuff. It's like good looking houses.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Can I add
Go
something
ahead.
on that point?
Yes, Catherine.
I think what I would consider in that situation is, was the area actually unsafe before, or did it just look stereotypically low income and so they assumed it was unsafe?
No, yeah, like the neighborhood was really, I don't know if you ever heard about the bottom, but the bottom in Shreveport was like bad, like shotgun houses bad. So yeah, it was bad. Like, a lot of things happened in that neighborhood.
The bottom? I had
Yeah.
never heard of that.
Me
Me
neither.
neither.
And I stayed in
I'm from
Shreveport.
Shreveport.
Yeah.
Well, it's the bottom, the Allendale neighborhood.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow. Huh. Yeah, but to have it commonly referred to as the bottom is, that's sad to me. And just what we started out talking about racism and how we know it exists. That's sad that it has to be called the bottom. Bottom of what? I mean, community?
The barrel, I guess.
Yeah, bottom of the barrel community.
Bikini Bottom.
Bikini Bottom. Somebody watches SpongeBob. Lord, I got enough of SpongeBob. Holy cow, with my grandchildren. Anyhow, so yes, the thing about gentrification, and there's a variation, Ms. Burke. So what you're describing is revitalization and recovery. Okay. So during Hurricane Katrina, which, I was very active with volunteering with United Way and 211 system, and had students involved and my family involved and so on. A lot of people were involved in that effort. There were also various other efforts that I was not involved in, but I know about them because we would engage in meetings that had people talking about these houses that were being built to replace the ones that were destroyed or damaged beyond ability to occupy or reoccupy. So that's called revitalization, when you revive a neighborhood. Gentrification refers to something that's far less positive. That's a positive thing that you're describing, LaSherica, because if that's the case, then it improves the neighborhood. But here's the thing, we talked about redlining before in this class, I know. If it was still predominantly a Black neighborhood, the fact is that still this very day, even with brand new houses and improvement in the overall environment around you, that it's no longer considered as bad as it was when it was just commonly referred to as the bottom of the barrel, or the bottom, as you said. That's those property values probably didn't go up that much, even with new houses.
Can I use an example of gentrification that I guess?
Yes, Andrea, go ahead.
When I went to San Antonio, I was just walking around and stuff like that. I went to a music shop, and one lady had warned me about the homeless population increasing because of gentrification,
Right.
because a lot of big businesses were coming and buying out the property over there that because I guess it was low at the time. And a lot of people had to move from that area because of course they couldn't afford it. So the population, the homeless population increased in San Antonio in that particular area, which I did see like a few homeless people just walking around that particular area. But there's a lot of big businesses coming into big cities, making the inflation rate higher than what it needs to be.
Yeah, and that exact same thing you're describing in San Antonio is what really took place big time after Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. You know, began to recover. They just took over everything but the 6th Ward, from what I understand. I haven't been down there in forever, but
they ain't touch it.
Yeah, well, that's what I understood. That's what I understood. But yeah, they'll go into the metropolitan areas, take an old house, rehab it, and then sell it for, you know, a ton of money because it's in the city, right? And that's what gentrification is. It's the displacement. It's taking over degraded property, rehabbing it to a state where the area can demand a higher cost, and it drives out the previous occupants. And that's what was happening everywhere around New Orleans during that time. Lots of interesting public access stuff that I had opportunity to watch a few times being down there shortly after, where people were talking about how they were being displaced and having difficulty finding places to live. Yeah. So that's what gentrification is. It's artificially bumping up the price of the neighborhoods so that it'll catch on. And the reason I asked about those programs on cable TV is because my husband watches those things, and oh my God, I can't believe there are so many programs now doing that, which suggests to me that this whole gentrification thing is just really widespread. He was watching some program last night where it was in Laurel, Mississippi. And this couple, it's like every time you turn around, there's some person, some cute, you know, female that's doing the work her dad helps her do, or her husband helps her do. And most of the time it's couples and, you know, a man and a wife, and they're going at it, or a brother and sister. And it's crazy the number of programs on like that. And so the one in Laurel, though, my husband was watching yesterday, was they took a $12,500 little house and turned it into $75,000 house. Now think about, if you know anything about rural Mississippi, and Laurel is part of rural Mississippi, then you can imagine where that house was located. So we'll see, you know, what happens is that facility, that house and the occupants, you know, with the higher income, that's probably an example of gentrification. So that's one reason I brought that up. So anywho, okay, so enough about T-Town, just checking to see what you've observed. This website about person-centered, let's see, it's person-centered, participant directed. That's what the PD stands for, is participant directed. And really, this is just an informational source to make you aware of what person-centered practice is, which you should definitely be conversant with, especially when you go your master's, if you go on for that, or even if you get an RSW and work like those of y'all with 4E, knowing that person-centered is, or consumer-driven was another way to say person-centered. That is exactly, those of you in 4E who will be going to work for that year, if you receive the stipend, that's what you're expected to know about, because that's the emphasis of DCFS, or the child welfare field, is consumer-driven or person-centered practices. That's just the new language being used today. Okay, and then we were going to go over these other notes. Let's see how far we get. Okay, I want to look first at what this Unit 3 is going to be about, because we're going to, you know, take those some of those notes into this unit too, because you just got them last week. You'll also use them for your quiz, which I'm working on now. Expect a lot of stuff from the NASW code. Like I said, when we started today, that's because we spent a lot of time on that. We want you to be able to articulate, especially those practice standards. So what I've done so far, and I'll pull up a couple to show you that I've written so far, and I'm wanting to rewrite those so that they're have to do with ethical violations, real cases of situations, okay? So far you have this video on Black Lives Matter and Black Power. You're going to have some material on advocacy. Let's see, coronavirus is our future. I don't know about this one about managing anxiety. And then the polio crusade. These two videos tie in. This is why they're required. They tie in with advocacy and also with macro practice. Because when you are working in macro levels, you are typically in that indirect practice method. Remember those two categories of practice methods in social work? Direct, which is, what's the short way to refer to direct practice? What are you doing in direct practice?
Micro work.
And what about micro makes direct practice different from indirect? You know this.
It's the hands-on, one-on-one.
Yes, it's face-to-face. That's simply it. It's face-to-face, okay? So casework, individual therapy, counseling, and group work, individual counseling, casework, service delivery, resource work, and of course, counseling you do on the master's level, casework, resource work you do on the bachelor's level, and then group work. Remember, group work can go between the two methods of direct and indirect. Direct means you are directly working with the client, face-to-face. So remember that. Direct practice is when you're working face-to-face with the client, okay? Indirect means that you're not working face-to-face with the client, but you are impacting clients. So if you're doing administration, you're probably writing agency policy. That policy filters down to workers. And when it filters down to workers, it impacts direct clients, right? It impacts what you do in administration, not face-to-face with clients, but indirectly by writing policy that filters down to the agency where the worker does the face-to-face. You're impacting clients, right? When you do supervision, you may actually be in that agency and see the clients, but you're not working with them personally yourself, typically. Depends on the size of your office, right? What you're doing in supervising your workers, getting them scheduled, following up, reviewing their records, writing reports, then that also, just like administration, where you're writing policy, when you're doing supervision, you are impacting the clients because you're making sure that your workers are doing right by your clients, that they're treating them ethically and providing the services that they need. You're treating them ethically and competently and with integrity, right? So make sure you're aware of those. And remember, group work can go between the two. One real important part of indirect practice is community practice. On top of that is what evolved in my career that we now call policy practice. Policy practice is like you will be hearing on March 22nd, which I'm very excited about. The supervisee that I talked about the last time we had class, who's going to talk to you about her experiences. She's still in Alabama, is pursuing her doctorate now at where she just applied at University of Alabama. So we're hoping that she'll get in there, but she's going to get in somewhere. But in any case, she now teaches at Talladega College, which is an HBCU in Alabama. And she's going to talk to you about how she has actually engaged in policy practice. So Shania, you and anyone who, like you, finds themselves being attracted to that indirect practice method, you carry a huge impact there. Trace that's her name is Trace. I mentioned it last time. She's, she owes me one because I wrote her a letter of reference. So anyhow, she she worked with the Alabama Coalition Against Rape. She was, I believe, their president. She worked on legislation, and she's going to be able to talk to you about those experiences and how she went about it. She's a great presenter, very enthusiastic. So I know you'll enjoy her. I'm sure you will. So you have that to look forward to. Now, the way these relate to advocacy is when you look at this, this video, it's not very long. It's about 18 minutes. And this one, this polio crusade, you just see a chapter 1, which is about 9 minutes. It's enough to give you a sense of what that was about. The polio crusade was another epidemic. I'm not sure that it was ever called a pandemic that I can recall. But this is a disease that children got and caused handicapping conditions that kids from my generation were very prone to. Baby boomers who were born between 1940 and 1950. By the time the 60s came along, the baby boomers born in that period up to 1965 escaped the polio. And we had these vaccines that left this big scar, and they put this plastic thing on your arm, and it was just not fun and got all gunky and ugh. So thankfully we don't do it that way anymore. But you still receive vaccinations, children do, to prevent polio from resurfacing, as is the case with all of the communicable diseases like measles, mumps, rubella, chickenpox now, thankfully. So that's what this is about. And what's interesting about this is that it talks about, as it says here in the description, the impact on the individuals, on the families, and also states, because it gives you how states responded to the epidemic of children, particularly the kinds of things that were developed. And it should kind of give you an idea of paralleling what we've been through with this COVID, from the development of the vaccine to get it under control, to the types of treatment that were done, the impact on the state budgets, and so on. So you may see most of that, but you'll get a definite feel for how there are responses on every level. And that's what this course is primarily about. You had individual and family, micro meso, when you had your first practice course, 3015, and now we're focusing on these macro responses, which really are just as important as the individual work that we do. We've got to have both ends, right? We've got to have direct and indirect, because of all that is our knowledge base as social workers. This is why I feel so badly about policy. You are expected to be experts in the social welfare institution. You're expected to know how to dig resources. That's part of your skill base. You're expected to know how to help people navigate to get what they need to meet their basic needs, right? But if your resources for helping people get what they need to meet their basic needs are underfunded or are not well developed or don't exist at all to take care of a human need, then that's where policy comes in. And that's what you're going to hear Trace talk about in her primary concerns, which is about interpersonal violence and domestic violence, rape, sexual assault generally. So you're going to hear her as a just incredible advocate in the state of Alabama, and she's known throughout the state too, by the way. So, and then this one here, is really interesting. I just reviewed it again, and it really fits our course in a different way than when we first viewed this last spring, because of course COVID was just starting, right? But now we've seen the evolution of all kinds of policies that impact how we are dealing with this pandemic. I'll just give you some prelude warning that when you view it, it may be sort of discouraging, because the presenter talks about how, get used to it. It goes with climate change, unfortunately, and you're going to see these things pop up from probably the rest of our lives, rest of your lives, and probably your children's lives. But she talks about how macro institutions actually respond to the human need for healthcare and protection from these viruses. And within that, she advocates for those who are listening, which will be y'all, right? That when you become an advocate for greater awareness about the propensity for development of other viruses that can cause similar catastrophes like we've been through this year, from loss of jobs and people in food lines and staying home and kids out of school and just terrible times we've had, that we can mitigate, reduce the impact when they surface, number one. And number two, we can maybe even prevent them, okay? That's important macro stuff that affects huge populations, in fact, the world, right? So I want you to watch that. Now, this one comes down to United States and an issue that contrasts two different approaches to macro practice, if you will. Now, neither Martin Luther King or Stokely Carmichael, historians from the era, the 1960s of the Civil Rights era and the Black Power movement, neither of these individuals, these gentlemen, of course, Martin Luther King is senior, is why we have MLK Day, and he was the peaceful advocate. Stokely Carmichael, however, that you'll see on this little short video, is about any means necessary. He was in the Malcolm X camp, right? But he talks about how it was distorted by the institution of media and by the cultural norm still prevalent in this era of the 1960s of blatant, explicit white racism, right? Look, as late as the 1970s, there were reports of people it was, on the news and such, but rarely followed through when someone was lynched, when a Black man was lynched. I know for a fact in Faraday, Louisiana, from the man who lived it, that there was a shoe shine person and a shoe repair person who had built a thriving business, had his house right on the main street there in Faraday. And this gentleman in the 6th grade witnessed it being burned by the Ku Klux Klan in '68. Now that seems like eons ago to you. To me, that's my history. That's stuff that, I lived during that time. I wasn't in Faraday. I was a military brat, but this gentleman was. He was born and raised there, a white guy. And it killed that gentleman. Was anyone ever brought to justice? No. When people were brought to justice in the 60s, did they suffer consequences? No. In fact, when I was at Jacksonville State University, I had a student who married a grandson of a KKK guy, or actually a great-grandson of a KKK guy that was still living, that was involved in the 3 guys in Mississippi that were killed. Schwimmer, I can never remember the names. I always forget the names. That's terrible. So that man was just brought to court and sentenced, though he was dying. He went home anyway, according to the student. never was brought to justice until the Southern Poverty Law Center in their attorneys excavating that course, that case from history and bringing charges systematically. They've been pursuing that of those who are still surviving of that era. So, you know, this is real history, and that was probably 2010, I want to say. So yes, most of y'all were young that time, I know, but still, that's in your lifetimes, right? Just like my lifetime, I was in, oh gosh, 68, 69, I was probably in 9th grade, I think, when that case occurred that I told you about in Faraday. So that meant that, oh, I underestimated that guy. That guy was, oh gosh, he was a senior. Holy cow. Wow. Anyhow, so I want you to look at this because this shows you how institutions like media can influence public opinion and prevent or create social problems. In the case of Black Lives Matter today, they are seeking to change policy. They're seeking to bring justice to those who are police officers who deliberately assault, and in numbers that are truly unjust, people just because they are not white. Still happens. And that's what's going on right now in, is it Michigan or Minnesota? I think it's Michigan. The George Floyd case, where the officer is now pending court once they get the jury selected, which is going on this week, to, what was the comment?
Oh no, it was in Minnesota.
Minnesota, okay. So George Floyd, when he was killed by having a cop kneel on his neck for 8+ minutes, almost 9 minutes, killed him, even though he was saying, I can't breathe. That's the story you may be familiar with. And so that case is just now going to court. When did that happen anyway? What year, do you know?
What year? What happened?
The George Floyd.
Last year.
Okay. And then the Michael Brown, when did that one happen?
That happened like when I was during high school, probably like 2015, 16.
Yeah, I want to say 14. Yeah, because I had a student that actually went to the march, the first march they did. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So see, this stuff is your lifetime that we are now finally through Black Lives Matter movement, pushing the envelope that much further to eradicate these, if possible, these institutions perpetrating acts of racial violence. And that's what Black Power was about. They weren't about being violent. They were about protecting their own. And that's exactly what Black Lives Matter is about too, right? The big difference is there are tons more white allies and other race allies, not just Blacks alone, right? I want you to think about that, allies, because that'll come up in some of the text reading that we'll have that I'm gonna put up for y'all. Okay, so these complement what you'll get when this folder is open, which will be your text readings about advocacy, how you actually engage in advocacy, which is the second form of indirect practice, community organization, right? So there's administration that involves policy writing, agency supervision, falls under administration, but then the second method in indirect practice is community organization. That's what goes on here. Organizing communities to march, to petition legislators, to testify before legislators on the state and federal level. Because really, in truth, I still agree with where our field was in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, where state legislatures is where it's at. Really, when we change practice and policies, when I say practice, I'm not talking about social work practice, I'm talking about social practices, interactions of institutions like the police with the public, or like healthcare with the public. We still have, to use a separate example, the issue of particularly Blacks, but also Latinas and Latinos who are resisting getting the vaccine, the COVID vaccine, no matter which one it is. And they're resisting. And on top of that is also the accessibility problem, because those populations, some of them, not all of them, but some of them are kind of isolated, particularly among the Latinos. So that's just a whole separate issue than what this deals with. This is just an example of current, past, things that are still ongoing. And it's good history for you to know about with Black Power. Okay. All right, so let's look just a minute at what I've written so far. And then I'm gonna, where's the quiz? I put it up here. There it is. Now I told you that we started, oh wait, shucks. All right. Well, dang, what's the problem here? All right, here we go. Okay, so here we go. We actually looked at this one already. I think we did. It may have been another case. Remind me if we did do it in here though. Okay, so this is actually from the Louisiana Board of Social Work Examiners. I expect you to know that abbreviation. I expect you to know these abbreviations of credentialing and licensing in the state of Louisiana, because that's where we're located, right? If you're going to go practice in another state or move to another state or do your master's in another state, take residency in another state, then and use your degree by getting licensed, then you're going to want to know what that board's name is and what their credentialing abbreviations are, because they vary by states. Okay, LCSW is still most commonly used, but they vary by states. So we're going to just use Louisiana, okay? So an RSW stands for what?
Registered social worker?
Yes,
Registered social worker.
there you go. That's right. And LABSWE stands for, I just said it.
License board.
Louisiana Board of Social Work
Examiners.
Examiners, yeah.
Yeah, that one's sometimes hard to remember because it's so odd. And that's because it's bureaucratic. It's part of the bureaucracy of occupational licensure within our state government. Okay. So yeah, so this LA, don't let it throw you. Sometimes it'll be written just like that because it's just the abbreviation for the state. For Minnesota, it's just Minnesota, and which is written out or abbreviated MN, and then a new set of alphabets, which is BOSW, Board of Social Work. Forward. I always like that. I know that because I have a license there too. Anyway, so here we go. How would you answer this? An RSW, the RSW credential of a Louisiana social worker was suspended because he knowingly caused behavioral health services providers to submit approximately $176,000 plus in false fraudulent claims to and paid by Medicaid. That's directly from the board disciplinary action that you can pull up. I put it as a he just to vary a little bit, but that's public. It's public access. So I guess I didn't really have to do that. But anyway, so in his hearing before the board, he showed text messages from his employer requesting his agency billing password. And the employer used his password to submit the fraudulent billing. But he does admit that he knew that the employer was doing that. So that's why he had his license suspended. So what ethical standard or practices did this RSW violate? First of all, remember the values, the principles, the standards. What standards? Which part of the NSW code are we talking about? You're supposed to know this for sure.
What? Okay, so would you say integrity?
Integrity? Okay.
Yes, like.
Is that a value or is that a principle or a practice standard?
It's a value.
Okay. So.
And I say that because like they wasn't using it and he knew that man was doing some fraud.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So if it's a standard, which standard is it? 1 through 6, which one? Commitment to clients, commitment to colleagues.
Really, it could have been for everyone, right? Because we don't know what type of information he did use, link. So we don't know if it was the client's information that he was doing the fraud on, or we don't know if it's the employee's information, correct?
Well, if he's doing billing, it's services. It's for services. That's what you can see.
So on a client.
Yeah. So the service providers. Yeah. So it's a client. Okay.
Okay.
If you look at practice settings, that's number 3, practice settings. Practice settings is the where you see it says supervision, consultation, evaluation, client research, and then there's one specifically for billing. So billing and administration would be part of, what we would see if there was a multiple choice. So let's see what you have here. And you're getting, so performance evaluation, no. Education and training, no. Could be maybe. Client records and transfer, no. That's under settings, but it would be client records and billing. Okay, so the way you maintain client records. Here's why it's client records. Because your billing is supported by client records. Remember the principle that I knew. If it's not written down, it wasn't done. Right? And if you backdate, that's not good for third-party payers like Medicaid or health companies. Right?
That's right.
Okay. All right, so let's.
Okay, so what exactly do you have pulled up here? I know it's a midterm prep, but I mean, we're just looking at it on your screen. Do we have it?
No, you don't have this yet.
Okay.
No, not yet. No, because I'm still writing it, Ms. Davis. I'm still writing it. Like I said, y'all's was the last one I didn't get done because I just told you, started out telling you about that Whitehead book, Colson Whitehead's book, Underground Railroad.
Dr. Say,
Yes, ma'am.
so the whole midterm is multiple choice?
It's a combination of multiple choice and true false. And it will be from this quiz. That's why you're going to do this quiz and do it over and over, like I always give you opportunities to do in classes you've had with me, that you're going to be able to do it at least, you can do it as often as you need to within the week it's open. Okay. Remember, the time frame starts from the moment I open it for you, not, now or last week. I mean, obviously that can't happen, right? I'm not going to do that to you. But then your midterm will be time limited and you will have one opportunity. So that's why you want to study this and use this as a guide to know what to study for the midterm. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Good. All right. Okay. So let's go back and look at the ones I managed to get written. Okay. All right. Here's one. All of these I've written so far
Put it
straight
there.
code. Okay. So this one is a question about, let's see, is this one a true false one? I think it is. Okay, in the case of that social worker, the RSW that lost his license, actually we call it a credential because you don't test for it. You just fill out an application to get the RSW credential. But when you test for something, that's licensing, because you have to prove what you know, actually what you're supposed to know in order to do that job, right? So an RSW lost his credential due to fraudulent billing. For what field work practice was he most likely employed in? It's multiple choice. So what field? What's the difference between field and a setting?
Field is like the area of study, and then setting is like, where you actually work or whatever.
It's the agency, exactly right. So the field, I like to say, is the people, and the field defines what that setting works with or who that setting works with, right? The setting is in one of those three things that we know from policy, the three things that were stressed, if nothing else was, that there are three, the social welfare institution is not just government programs. It also includes what else? Voluntary programs or nonprofits. And it also includes corporations, for-profits, right? Oh gosh, what is the name of that business that is, I think it's called Maximus, something like that. It's like a growing entity nationwide that provides social services, including taking over state agencies, like DCFS, believe it or not. Helping, it's Maximus, helping the government serve the people. And they are a multi-million-dollar, I think billion-dollar business. Yep, they are. 85.57 billion, no wait, no, that's per share, stock share is $85.57, and their worth, they have grown so much since 1975 that they are now worth $3.46 billion. And they do training, they do foster care, they do investigation, they do criminal justice, corporate takeover of government services. Now, you got to figure that that's being consulted out by the government, and usually at non-bid contracts for some of the services in some states, not all, but some. But anyway, okay. So, what field if he's billing for behavioral health? Where do you do behavioral health type work? What field are you working in? What kind of what issues do people have when you're working in behavioral
mental health.
That's right. So that one should be easy. So when you're thinking about field, you're thinking about the people who are defined by why they're going to that agency. So people go to behavioral health because of mental health disorders, personality disorders, behavioral disorders that fall into the field of mental health. There you go. You got it. Okay, let me see. I think I only got 3. Wait, I thought I had one more written. Oh, I think I was writing this one. I didn't get to finish it. Not what I wanted. Hold on. Here we go. Because as I write these questions, I try to do them from things that we've talked about in each semester. I get so far with each unit, and sometimes I don't get as far as I want to, or things happen like COVID, where you end up with that impacted everybody nationwide, worldwide. That sometimes for whatever reason, we don't get as far as we want to in text or whatever. It's another reason I don't like to have y'all buy books now that we can do open access. So you can expect these kinds of questions. So from NASW, Code of Ethics, because we spent a whole lot of time when we first started this course reviewing all of that. And now we're starting to deal with the meat of practice skills with macro practice, okay? So on case number 1285, and I should have number in okay, the RSW was placed on probation with requirements for obtaining ethical training, was required to pay court fees and penalties for a violation. And trust me, I was late 1 month. 1 month. You can actually look up my disciplinary action. When I first moved from Alabama to Louisiana, I did not renew my license in time. So I was out of compliance, and they started probably about 10 years ago now. The board, Louisiana board, sends you notices. Alabama and Minnesota just lets you reinstate. It's kind of weird. Of course, it costs you more money, but the Louisiana, they'll send you a letter saying cease and desist because you're not licensed. If you're outside of the 1 month range, they give you the leeway for getting your license renewed. Well, I renew in September. And so my license renewal was a month out of compliance. And yeah, I had to pay $400. I think it came out total around $100 because mine was a minor infraction, So I had renewed and had been renewed ever since then. But anyway, it takes time for sometimes these to work their way through. So yeah, it's not a good thing. Louisiana does not mess around with their licensing. So anyway, so here's this case 1285, which you can actually look up. And the RSW placed on probation, required to do ethical training and to pay court fees. So she probably had to pay probably about what I paid, or maybe a little more for this one. And what did she do? She provided social services, multiple incidences of services to her sister and to her son. So what practice standard would y'all say that this violates?
Code of ethics.
I was gonna say, can you pull up?
Oh,
I don't know the code of ethics, but I know for a fact you're not supposed to work with family because that's too close to the case.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. Actually, this would be this first standard, and it's conflict of interest.
Oh, yeah.
Conflict of interest. Yeah. So
where is the list of conflict of interest and stuff? Like the standards and stuff.
Okay.
The NASW thing that we was looking at that time.
Yeah, I gave you an outline. Okay. So let's go back up here and find it.
So Dr. Savage, you had to pay a fine?
I sure did.
For what?
For I was out of compliance. I didn't renew my license on time. I was 1 month out of compliance. I was 1 month late past the extension date, really.
Oh, I see it.
You renew? Yeah, you see it? So there's the preamble, which tells you what the purposes are. And then what the purposes perspective are. And then they're spelled out here.
Oh, wait, let me see. I'm not
Framework for
looking
the
at that
code.
one.
Then there are principles. And that's what, when you're talking about the integrity, here it is. Integrity is a value. A value is different. And a value is abstract, but it is a core guiding belief. Okay. Sometimes we have bad values. In the case of licensure, we hope and pray that they're set up for the intents and purposes of good. And certainly ours is. So our values are what guides our belief system, and our belief system is manifested in the laws that we have in our licensing boards. And those laws reflect competence and integrity, human relationships, dignity and worth. When we talk about respecting individuals, our commitment to social justice and service. So it reflects these. So these standards are what I've referred to as practice methods or practice standards. So you can think of it as ethical standards, but they're also practice standards that we're called on to uphold and be aware of, right? That's why we have to do ethics training in order to maintain licensure, okay? So this is where they are. They're right here, right up at the top in the SW Code of Ethics. And what I did was give you that of those to help you try to memorize those, hopefully. Let's see, where did I put that? Was it in Unit 1? I think this is that document. Here's the outline.
Yeah, that's the one I had
These
pulled up.
outlines. And these, though, do not detail each one of these. You have to read those standards in order to detail each one of these. Now, the title of each of the sections are pretty self-explanatory, but you need to, be aware that, like this conflicts of interest, you might think goes with sexual harassment, or actually sexual harassment is very specific nowadays because it involves not just engaging in a romantic relationship, which is definitely a conflict of interest, but it's also harassment. The reason it's always harassment is because even if the client, say you're in mental health and you've got a client that's 5 years older than you and he falls in love with you, because we're all ladies here, and or she falls in love with you and she's 5 years older than you, whichever. So you find yourself responding to that. You're trying not to, but you respond to it. And the next thing you know, you're in a intimate sexual relationship with that person. And you might think that the older person as your client is not the one who's most powerful, but that's not the case. You are the one who's most powerful, even in that example that I'm drawing just for purposes of demonstration, because you have the power of your agency and you misuse your power when you succumb to anyone in that way. Or when you, as in the example of that item, decide that, you can just have your sister come in and get her hooked up with services, or your brother come in, or your son, or whomever, right?
Have you ever experienced, like, not just you personally, just whatever agency you worked at, where there was like employees or people doing their clients in a sexual romantic way?
I can't say that I've seen clients, I've seen colleagues.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've definitely seen colleagues, especially in hospital. Oh my God.
Because, like, I can never understand how people can do that at their job, knowing how much of a power dynamic that they have over that person. I just find it attractive and so unprofessional. Because, like, the main thing my mom always told me is to never mix business with pleasure. And I've always had that saying stuck with me.
Right. Yeah. But people are people. We're all human beings, and we're all subject to the same foibles and weaknesses and life crises that make us weak, where we do things we think we never would.
Yeah, but when it conflicts with my money, that I have an issue.
Yeah, well, you would think that would be a deterrent for most people, and for most people it probably is. Those social norms of not violating your family, or holding whatever, or your integrity at work, your job, your salary. Yeah, you'd think that would be yeah. People have all kinds of stressful events that happen and cause different kinds of intrigue and stuff. Yeah. Anywho, so what I did for this, Delisha, the reason I did this is so that hopefully y'all could be able to remember it. And then when I went over this the first time, putting it up there for you, remember the one to clients, because they're number one, right?
Yes, ma'am.
reason we do this work, even if we're doing it indirectly in administration or community organization, right? That we just went over. You with me?
Yes, ma'am.
Enforcing those concepts. So it's all about the clients. And if we're working directly with clients, then we have these responsibilities. And the people we're working with, we have responsibilities. Now they begin to diminish in number. The one standard with the most is clients. The other standards diminish in number. They go to colleagues, which would be the next highest, that ties with settings, your practice setting. And as you saw from those examples that I gave you from the Board of Social Work Examiners in the disciplinary actions, that your practice setting carries a lot of weight. It's not just, intimate relationships with clients that are inappropriate, or the case of the woman who lost her license because she was reprimanded. She didn't lose her license, but for serving her sister and her son, that is separate and apart from the first case where the agency, the setting, was put at risk. So that meant that the setting, because they had fraudulent billing in that first case we went over, then on the macro level impacts a whole segment of a population that may be receiving services from that behavioral health agency, right? Because if they get shut down, who's going to fill the void? Well, there's a lot of competition in the world today, obviously, with behavioral health services, and especially with corporations getting in the business. But nonetheless, are those going to be affordable? What if that behavioral health services was public and it gets sanctioned and it gets its budget cut? That could happen. If it's public, that means it's government, right? If it's nonprofit, it could lose its funding entirely because of fraudulent billing. Not just paying back, but losing their job and livelihood and the livelihood of everybody works there. And if it's corporate, same difference as nonprofit, that it could be shut down, lose stockholders in the case of corporations. So it loses profit. Remember, nonprofits are not about making profit. They're about service delivery. Well, we're going to talk some about those a little more too, though, because nonprofits can actually make profit, but they have to stash it away and have maybe 5 years now, depends on the state. Used to be 3 years in Louisiana, but I haven't had cause to follow up on that since I've been back in Louisiana. So yeah, 3 to 5 years, you can have 3 to 5 years of income for running your agency in the event you have to close. So say this fraudulent billing for this behavioral health was a nonprofit. Well, then they should have money set aside as a nonprofit from their billing that allowed them to gradually terminate services. You see, that's how that's supposed to work, but that's another class. That's not going to be on this quiz or on this midterm. Okay, the mid only going to be on stuff in Unit 1 and Unit 2. Okay, all right. So colleagues, 10 of them, settings, 10 of them, and just remember that the only standard that has an odd number is the one with the most numbers, and that's the 17 clients. The others are all even numbers. You see that? And I'm telling you this as ways to help you remember these so that you can find them more easily. Because if you know what they are, what each of the items are in the code, then you're going to be able to find it more easily when you click back up there on the NASW code link that I showed you, right? Okay. All right, so settings. This is the actual agency you work in, and that includes your private agency, your private practice, in other words. And then just general competence, 8 of those. And then your standard of commitment to the profession, engaging in research and supporting the profession. I'd like to see added to this is demonstrating socialization within the profession. So it would be socialization within the profession. That's another lecture. And then you have 4 of these to the society, which my little thing down here is blocking. There you go. So the society, there are 4 of those. Okay. So 2 through 6 are even numbered. The first 2 and 3 are 10, 8, 2, and 4 to help you remember. So that way you should be able to find them more easily. Okay. All right. So I'm going to cut it short for y'all today and go take care of some administrative stuff I need to do before the day runs out because I almost forgot about it. And I will be finishing later this evening. And I'll
Dr. Savage, go up.
Sorry, what?
Scroll up.
Scroll up?
Yeah.
Okay,
I was looking for my name.
there you are. So Dr. Horn will probably be doing your midterm.
So, okay, so do we reach out to these people or they reach out to us?
Well, we're going to reach out to your field supervisors. Okay, and he'll be networking with Dr. Salisbury to make sure she gets, you know, the outcome of your midterm evaluations and your final evaluations. But you should reach out to either me or Dr. Horn in addition to calling Dr. Salisbury if you have up or issues in your placement. They can be personal issues or they can be issues with your field supervisor. It could be issues with what you're doing in your field. It could be anything that is going to potentially compromise your field placement.
And can you elaborate on what you said earlier about what to discuss with your field instructor about the evaluation form? Because I'm gonna talk with mine tomorrow about it. They say you go over it, they score you, and like y'all just go over it.
Yeah, well, actually, you give the form to them.
Mm-hmm.
They score it. They bring you in. The two of you are supposed to sit down, each one of you with your individual field supervisor, and y'all go over it. You should have an opportunity to read through it and look at each one, discuss, ask questions about it. Some supervisors are more assertive and like that teaching role more than others. Some just say, here, look at it. What do you think? And you say, great, and you sign it, and that's it. We would hope that there's a lot more interaction about what you've done in each part of your evaluation, because that comes back to us as not just how well you've done in your field placement. It comes back to us to maintain accreditation too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you may have, in your case, Andrea, have Mr. Marner talk to you, one-on-one about it, and then you can make comments on it about whether you agree or disagree. Either way, if you agree, make a comment, or you can just sign it, or if you disagree, you can state why.
Okay, just want to make sure when we talk about it tomorrow when I get there.
Yeah, that's what's supposed to happen. And then all that we do is talk to your supervisor about how you're doing, what the evaluation showed, whether there was any disagreement with how you were evaluated, etc.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks for the info.
Okay, but also know this, that no matter what you're experiencing in your field, that you should contact, me or Dr. Horn or Dr. Salisbury. You should definitely be letting her know in your field seminar class with her on Monday mornings. So about whether you feel like you're getting a good experience.
Oh, I am. It was just at the moment, for the moment.
Right.
Thing.
Yeah, but you'd be surprised. There's always circumstances where students end up being used for gophers and they don't get a good example or a good opportunity to actually practice the things we've been teaching you,
Always like that there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's when you have to speak up or contact us if you're uncomfortable doing that, and we'll talk to you supervisors.
Yes, ma'am. But overall, everything's been fine. He had told me I did pretty good work with the case management last week. So
yeah,
I missed Friday, but I had to because
Right. Yeah.
But overall, my friend's okay. I picked her up from the facility that she
Okay.
was transferred to.
Okay, great. That's good news. Good news. Yeah. And you did good. You and Ms. Flores, I know, both y'all did really good contacting us and letting us know of things that were going on. So that's good. And all of y'all should do that, practice that. Yeah.
Oh, yes, ma'am. I try my best.
All right. You did good. Okay. Anything else? Because we're going to shut down then.
No, ma'am. You have a great day.
Okay. Well, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I'll hang on for about 5 minutes. So if anybody does. Harley, we are coming to your agencies, I think on your schedule there, because I was just looking at it when I was posting that list of who's assigned to who, that, let's see, Dr. Salisbury has the evaluations actually happening next week, I think. No, I think it's week 9. Anyhow, yeah, we come out to your agencies. We have to schedule them, of course, according to their schedule and ours, and then we let you know when that is. So it'll be this week, possibly the first of next week. Anything else I can help you with?
I think that's all.
Okay. Good comments today, Delisha. Appreciate it.
Mhm.